Welcome to The Blast Zone, the podcast where we dig up the bombs that shook Hollywood and try to find out why they went up in flames. This week, everybody was kung fu fighting. Their kicks were kind of fast sometimes, I guess. This is Street Fighter, The Legend of Chun-Li. Welcome to The Blast Zone.
Welcome to The Blast Zone.
We are not a podcast about bad movies. We are a podcast about movies that did badly.
That's right.
I am Jon Drake, in-house film critic of my Letterboxd account.
And I'm Ian Dukes. I'm a person with thoughts and feelings, and some of them are about movies.
Movies like Street Fighter, The Legend of Chun-Li, which we'll be talking about today. But before we get into that, Ian, how are you doing this week?
Well, I talk about my walking a lot on this show, but why do I do it? Why spend hours a day like a hamster pacing in circles around my tiny enclosure? Well, let me tell you a story. Some months ago, I bought a pair of pants off of eBay, and when they got here, they were too tight. I couldn't even button them up at all, but they were too cheap to be worth sending back. Cut to a few days ago, I decided to try those pants on again, and wouldn't you know, they buttoned up easily. They fit perfect.
There you go.
They still look dumb as hell, though, but great fit.
eBay, not the most well-known place to get your clothes from. Old technology, maybe some old video games or baseball cards, but pants is a new one. What brought you to eBay for pants?
There's a whole subculture of that. It's like thrifting, but you don't have to leave the house.
Thrifting for introverts.
Exactly. And that's me. It works pretty good. You can fully shop some outfits on eBay.
All right. I might have to look into this for my own needs.
How are you doing this week?
I'm doing okay. I gave you a little bit of a preview of what I would be talking about today because bat-eared listeners may remember that my family has all their birthdays in the first 12 days of June. Me, both my kids, my wife, my brother, my mom's shortly after that. So
Nice.
We just do one big party in June for everybody's birthday and get it all out of the way. And that was yesterday.
Well, happy birthday to the whole family. I hope you guys had a good time.
Yeah, it was a great time. Everybody seemed to enjoy it. I may have overindulged. I was a little scared that I was going to have to cancel this recording, but it all worked out in the end and I'm feeling up for it. So I'm ready to go. If it was any movie that I cared about even a little bit, I might have tried to push the episode to make sure I gave it its due. But luckily, it's just Street Fighter, The Legend of Chun-Li. So it doesn't really matter.
It's just Chun-Li. She's going to get the best you can do given the circumstances.
Exactly. So before we get into all that, though, did you happen to watch anything you wanted to share with the listeners this week?
I did something interesting. I went back and I rewatched Nope from 2022.
Oh, we were just talking about rewatching that.
Yeah. So, like this pod is about movies, but at its best, it's also a journey of self-discovery. And one of the biggest things I've learned over the years we've been doing this is how malleable my perception is, how much more I get out of a movie when I rewatch it, especially a movie like Nope. It's got all these twisty time frames and subtle reveals, and it keeps you on edge the whole time. And it's a really smart movie. And of course, Jordan Peele loves horror movies. So it's not just a thinky movie that's got layers of meanings and themes about show business and exploitation and movie westerns. It's just like a fun horror movie at the same time. And it picks up a lot of speed as it moves towards the climax, gets there even faster than you think, which is really fun. And of course, the real reason that inspired me to go back and watch this was to revisit our new and burgeoning guy, Michael Wincott, who plays the cinematographer Antlers Holst. We previously covered him as the menacing spider pirate Scroop on Treasure Planet. In our very last episode, he was the bare-chested music bogle Philo Gant. He's been the big bad in tons of 90s movies, and he's not the big bad in this one. He is a fun kind of ally that helps the good guys. He's super fun in it. Now that I knew who he was, and I sort of had my footing for how to appreciate him. And of course, our dude, Keith David, shows up as Pops Haywood, so he's super good in that small role. And Nope was really fun to revisit.
Yeah, I've been meaning to go back and check it out again because I saw it in theaters, and that was the only time I saw it. The Gordy scenes traumatized me to the point where I'm hesitant to go back to it.
For sure.
But I really, really did like it. And I think Michael Wincott, underrated beard guy, he's really rocking it in that movie, and it works for him. Got kind of a Stephen Lang vibe going on there, and I think it's a good look for him.
Good look. Good sound as always. I mean, his voice is his calling card. And
they got Keith David and Michael Wincott in the same movie. They just need Clancy Brown in there to get all the iconic gravel-voiced men of the 80s and 90s. I went back and I watched something that I have not seen since I was a child, and I remembered loving, but also even as a 7 or 8 year old being being like, I don't think this is very good, but like, I don't really care yet. I'm too young to know what that means exactly, and it doesn't really affect me at this point. It was probably way too much preparation and research for this movie, but I watched the 1994 Street Fighter.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, I went back, I checked that out, wanted to see how the two movies compare to each other. They're obviously both abject failures, but for different reasons and in different ways. The Legend of Chun-Li, I think, tries to ground the Street Fighter story way too much, and the 94 version goes way in the other direction, and it's just super campy, cheesy, over the top. But I did want to call out a few positive things from that movie, which is number one, of course, it's a famous thing at this point that Raul Julia just put way too much effort into the role of M. Bison in the 1994 Street Fighter and just absolutely bodied every scene he's in. It was his final performance. It was released posthumously, and he just puts in an all-timer bad guy performance. Really worth watching just for that. But I thought I would pay extra special attention to Ming-Na Wen as Chun-Li to kind of see how they contrast with Kristin Kreuk in this week's movie. And my money's on Wen. I think she takes it. She really embodied the character. She had a little more of a personality of her own. Making her a journalist, I thought, was an interesting touch. It felt like they were trying to shoehorn in every reference and character from the Street Fighter games that they could, whether it made sense in that moment or not, which juxtaposed with Street Fighter: The Legend of Chun-Li only has maybe 4 or 5 characters that any casual fan would recognize from the games. And that's really only by name. Very few of them are wearing their iconic costumes or have any of the mannerisms or do any of the signature moves that they're known for. Very different approaches to a very lore light gaming series, I would imagine. It's funny how many Street Fighter screen adaptations there have been, because we're getting another one this summer, considering it's not really a story-driven game at all.
It's not story-driven. It's character-driven in a big way, though. I went back and researched a little bit of the origins of the video game, and it really was the pioneer in terms of competitive fighters, and they quickly expanded the idea of like how many characters you could play from the original, where it was you were just kind of like Ryu and Ken, I guess, maybe. And
Gen was actually from the original Street Fighter game. I don't think Ryu was in it.
I'm no expert, but what I did learn was like it really took off when they let you play all these different characters. They kept unlocking. And obviously, if you've played any other competitive fighter type games, that's the blueprint, right? It's just about seeing a grid of characters and having your fun with each one and learning their moves and stuff. And you would think that would be the fun of a Street Fighter movie. And as you say, that is not at all what this movie's about.
No, they go in a different direction. Oh, I do apologize. Ryu is in the first Street Fighter, and Ken is as well, but so is Gen. It seems like the Gen character in the Street Fighter game is pretty close to the character we get in this movie, and just at least in terms of the broad backstory. Were you a kid at the arcade pouring quarters into the machine? You might have been like college age maybe at that point. I don't know if you were playing those games, but were you familiar with Street Fighter 2? That's the one everybody kind of remembers the best.
Yeah, I was not familiar with this movie, Street Fighter: The Legend of Chun-Li, so let me get that out of the way.
I mean Street Fighter 2, the game.
Yeah, I didn't know about this movie. I did know about the games. I'm not sure at which release I became aware of them in arcades, but I went to arcades as a little kid before this game was out because it was the kind of thing you would do at a birthday party. And then when I was a young adult, it was already semi-retro, but there were still arcades open, even as home consoles sort of took over and destroyed the in-person gaming business. But I think Street Fighter was the kind of game that I maybe tried a couple times, and I just got my ass kicked really bad. And I was like, I'm intimidated by that. I'm going to go back to Galaga or whatever I like to play.
Yeah, and it's a lot of button combinations to remember. Every character has their unique moves. You got to hit everything in a certain sequence. But that being said, I will school anybody with Sagat. Come find me. Come find me at the arcade and I will throw down.
Nice.
Street Fighter 2, the original Skyrim, some say. Listen to how many versions of this game there were. Street Fighter 2, The World Warrior, Street Fighter 2 Champion Edition, Street Fighter 2 Turbo Hyper Fighting, Super Street Fighter 2, The New Challengers, Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo. That was all released between 1991 and 1994.
It's cool from a business perspective, the way they iterated this game. And the reason I know anything about the history of the video games is I watched one YouTube on it, and they were really just innovating. They're going, oh, what if we could unlock these other characters? Like at first, in the first game, combos were a bug. You weren't supposed to be able to string together things. And then they're like, oh, that's a cool thing. Let's make it a feature. And then they added special moves and they added all these wrinkles and layers to it. And they were really responding to what the players were into and evolving the idea of what these games could be like. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. You know what's not pretty cool is Street Fighter: The Legend of Chun-Li, this week's movie.
Oh, no.
You've already let loose that you did not hear about this movie before we started prepping for the podcast. And I would argue not many people have for a semi-recent kind of expensive adaptation of a pretty prominent video game property. This is not a well-known or well-remembered movie at all.
No. And that's one of my main ideas about this movie is it's way too old, in quotes, to be as recent as it is from 2009. Even when you watch this movie, you can see the age of the faces of the actors that are familiar to you. You're like, oh, when did this come out? Probably 1999, 1989. The content of this movie is super old. And you go, wait, this was done in 2009? That's the modern era. but the movie doesn't look old. It looks fine. Production value is good,
Yeah.
but something about the content and the style is so naive in an almost 80s way that it makes you think it's a throwback movie.
It does feel like a throwback, not in a positive way.
Right.
I listened to some of our back catalog in the last week or so, including Hollywood Homicide. And in that episode, we discussed that movie in kind of similar terms to how I feel about this one. It's a throwback in the sense that it's regressive, but it's not trying to pay homage to any kind of historical style. There's really no intentionality behind its retroness. It just is very cliche to the point where it feels like it's hearkening to something.
It's very generic. And in contrast to it feeling old, I also think it's the world's first AI movie. Maybe people didn't recognize it at the time, but now when you watch this, it feels like an AI generated thing because it's a bunch of movie-esque ideas, familiar patterns strung together, almost in a way where it's not incoherent, like it's a robot that doesn't quite understand human emotions. It's more like a robot that doesn't concern itself with understanding humans. Like the pieces are there, but the pieces are slotted in because those are pieces that go in movies.
Right.
It almost confounds your ability to criticize it. It's like, well, why did that character make that decision? Or why did that plot point happen that way? And you can't ask that question of this movie. It's just, well, because it's a movie. It's made out of movie parts.
That's how these things go.
They fit together. It works. But somehow it transcended its awfulness for me. I don't actually have a lot of hate for this movie because it just exists on its own terms.
We will have to pick that apart a little bit because I was kind of expecting a car crash just based on everything I heard about this movie and kind of the critical consensus surrounding it. And it's not that. It's not a car crash. There are a couple close calls where it starts looking like there might be a pileup, but it's mostly pretty competently made. It's just not exciting. But there are a few baffling choices that we will have fun picking apart.
Yeah, it's weird and dumb and fun in a lot of ways. And right, not that engaging because it is sort of AI. Like it makes gestures towards things that should move you, like especially Chun-Li's story. A lot of tragedy happens to her, a lot of struggle, but you kind of don't care.
Speaking of kind of not caring, do you want to get into how this thing was made?
I do care that you tell us how this thing happened.
All right. For a series that's always been relatively light on story, the Street Fighter games have a surprisingly robust screen presence. Hey, I just said that like 5 minutes ago. Street Fighter 2, the animated movie, was the first attempt at translating the game to the screen, and to be quite honest, it fucking rips. Released in August of 1994, it was also a critical and financial success, making $29 million against its $6 million budget. But the fun wasn't over yet, as 1994 would also see a live-action Street Fighter movie hit theaters on December 23rd, with names like Jean-Claude Van Damme playing the U.S. military colonel William Guile, because why the fuck not? America is a melting pot after all. Raul Julia as M. Bison.
The M stands for, the scenery's delicious.
And Ming-Na Wen as Chun-Li. The film had star power to spare. It made a decent amount at the box office, nearly tripling its budget, but was despised by critics and audiences, excepting an 8-year-old Jon Drake and his friends who watched it on repeat.
Aww.
I'd also be remiss if I didn't mention the absolute powerhouse performance Raul Julia gives in a movie that in no way deserves it. Hey, I just said that like 5 minutes ago. Remember? Elements from the movie were reused in the 1995 animated TV show, but a pure sequel never materialized despite persistent rumors. In 2006, Hyde Park Entertainment and Capcom announced that they'd be producing a new standalone movie set before the events of the first game, providing an origin story for both Chun-Li and M. Bison. In 2007, heralded cinematographer and tolerated director Andrzej Bartkowiak was announced to be helming the project, and later that year, Kristin Kreuk was announced as starring as Chun-Li. In 2008, Michael Clark Duncan, Chris Klein, Taboo from the Black Eyed Peas, Rick Yoon, and Neal McDonough were cast as familiar characters from the game, with Moon Bloodgood, Edmund Chen, Josie Ho, and Cheng Pei Pei also joining the cast.
They told all those actors, choose your character.
Filmed between March and April of 2008, production was a globe-trotting affair, as Hong Kong, Bangkok, Vancouver, British Columbia, the Northern Californian town of Herlong, and Reno, Nevada were all represented. Now titled Street Fighter: The Legend of Chun-Li, and with a respectable budget of $50 million, hopes were high this movie could break the long-standing video game adaptation curse.
Well, I sure hope it did.
It did not. Released on February 27th, 2009, the movie was not pre-screened for critics, usually an indication that the studio knows they have a stinker on their hands. But even that low bar was probably not low enough, as the movie holds an abysmal 3% rating on Rotten Tomatoes, and even fans of the video game were largely disappointed at the movie's tenuous at best relationship with the Street Fighter lore. Audiences stayed away as well, as it opened in just 9th place with $4.7 million, losing handedly to Madea Goes to Jail in its second week of release. The only other notable release that weekend was Jonas Brothers, the 3D concert experience, and honestly, I'd probably rather watch that. It dropped a massive 69% in its second weekend to bring in just $1.4 million, as Zack Snyder's Watchmen debuted and was an immediate hit.
Really? Who watches The Watchmen?
The movie is mostly forgotten now, which is for the best, except for when a supercut of all of Chris Klein's hilariously bad line deliveries pops up on YouTube. And that's this movie's legacy, a supercut of Chris Klein being awful at his job.
Or was he? We'll get into that.
God, he loves this job. That's his mantra, I guess. He repeats that line quite a bit.
Really interesting choices by the actors in this movie. There's a couple big name actors, and there's a lot of names that are less familiar to us, depending on whether you know Hong Kong cinema, etc. But they're all making different choices. They're all in different movies, which is part of the joy and fun of it.
Yeah, we're going to have to talk about the tonal clash between not just scenes, but like whole storylines and also performances. Everybody seems to be acting on a green screen, like by themselves in a room, because nobody is like matching each other's energy really well. It's all kind of a mishmash of different levels of commitment to the bit.
Yeah, it does make you question the director, Andrzej Bartkowiak, which we hopefully are saying his name correctly, because that's kind of his job, is to direct the actors and make sure that their performances go together and that the movie kind of works. And I don't know, was this his first movie as a director?
Not even close.
Oh.
He had directed quite a few movies. They're all pretty terrible. I know there are some people who will ride or die for Romeo Must Die, his movie with Jet Li, but then he directed Exit Wounds with Steven Seagal and DMX. So that's kind of giving you an idea of where he's at. Cradle to the Grave, which was another DMX movie, maybe with Jet Li. Yeah.
Okay.
And then the Doom movie, which we've been dancing around covering for a while.
Oh, I don't really know anything about that one. So maybe we'll get to come back to Bartkowiak. But like, he was famous first as a cinematographer. He was one of those people who made the leap.
Worked extensively with Sidney Lumet, a lot of big name directors, but especially
okay. And yeah, the movie looks good. It looks very professional. And like you said, they probably spent a lot of that budget on traveling around the world, because I guess in that sense, it's kind of true to Street Fighter, that has that international flavor. When you're in Hong Kong, it really feels like you're in Hong Kong. When you're in Bangkok, it really feels like you're there. So there's a lot of on-location filming that helps the setting, at least, be pretty convincing.
Yeah, a lot of globetrotting and a lot of practical explosions, which is probably where a lot of this movie's budget went to. Like you mentioned, there are names we recognize here, but no true A-listers. I can't imagine anybody was making $10, $15 million to star in this movie. So
that's a good point.
The money does show up on screen, but not in the way you'd hope. Take some of that budget and maybe hire a better fight choreographer, to just get into one of my many gripes with this movie.
Yeah, we'll talk about that too. I may have contrary opinions to you on a number of these issues.
I will fight tooth and nail that the fights in this movie are cut horrendously. There's way too many rapid fire cuts, especially in the climactic fight scenes, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. For now, do you want to start going through the story, such as it is?
Yeah, round one, fight. Chun-Li, played by Kristin Kreuk, is a little girl growing up on a fancy estate in Hong Kong. Chun-Li's mother is a beautiful white woman, and her father is a handsome and prosperous Chinese businessman who wants his daughter to become a classical pianist. But he also schools her in the martial art of wushu. One day, Chun-Li's father is abducted and held hostage by a suave criminal mastermind named M. Bison, played by Neal McDonough, with the help of his hulking minion, Balrog, played by Michael Clark Duncan. Despite missing her father, Chun-Li grows up to become a successful concert pianist. In the meantime, M. Bison has moved back to his hometown of Bangkok, Thailand, and has begun to enact a plan of domination. When the leaders of the 6 ruling crime families of Bangkok refuse to bow to Bison, he has all their heads cut off. This attracts the attention of a local cop from the Gangland Homicide Squad named Maya, played by Moon Bloodgood. Maya is quickly joined by Interpol agent Charlie Nash, played by Chris Klein, who's been tracking Bison across the globe for years, and they begin working the case together. Back in Hong Kong, one night after a piano concert, Chun-Li receives a mysterious ancient Chinese scroll, but she doesn't know what it says. Soon after that, her mother dies of cancer, leaving Chun-Li feeling alone and directionless. So she decides to investigate the old scroll. So she takes it to a lady in a scroll shop who reads the scroll, and she tells Chun-Li that she must give up her privileged life in Hong Kong and go to Bangkok to search for a man named Gen. Gen, played by Shou, is a former criminal turned protector of the downtrodden and the leader of a secret society called the Order of the Web. So Chun-Li says goodbye to her family servants and moves to Bangkok, where she lives on the streets and must struggle to get by. But Chun-Li still has a strong sense of justice, and one night she single-handedly takes on a pack of thugs who are harassing a helpless old man. Chun-Li defeats the hooligans but passes out in exhaustion. Then she's carried away to safety by a mysterious man who's none other than Gen.
For 8 years, I've been chasing a group called Shadaloo. Sorry, that's my Charlie Nash impression.
Charlie.
Yeah, we're going to have to talk a lot about Charlie, but we should start with Kristin Kreuk as Chun-Li. Probably the best concert pianist in the world. I don't know. Like, how do they still have so much money? Their dad's been gone for 20 years now.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Is she that good of a concert pianist that she's able to live this life of luxury based on her earnings? I don't think so.
Yeah, how did she afford to go to Juilliard? Her mom's still there living in Hong Kong, but backstage at this concert, her friend drops the fact that she knew her back from Juilliard days and she always got all the flowers because she was the best at piano. I guess her dad socked away a lot of money. Kudos to him for looking out for his family, even not anticipating his early forced retirement.
I do find it hilarious, though, that she gets this ancient Chinese scroll and she's like, well, household servants that have probably tended to me since I was a baby, fuck off. You guys are fired. I got to go live on the streets of Bangkok, so you're all dismissed. I know you rely on me for your survival, but I don't care now.
Yeah, she says this tearful goodbye, but they're the ones who should be crying because they lost their good job they had.
Their livelihood.
And there's a lot of them. There's like 7 or 8 people employed by this household.
Thank you, lady who does my laundry. Thank you, personal chef. Like, now you have to go work at the Applebee's downtown. It's kind of funny. She's fine. Kristin Kreuk's an actor I'm not super familiar with. I never really watched Smallville, which I guess is what she's best known for. Like a lot of YA television roles, I guess is how I would classify them. Like even if they weren't necessarily CW shows, they feel like spiritually they are.
Sure.
So not really my wheelhouse, but she's no Ming-Na Wen, but she's fine.
Yeah, she's fine in this. And she's making a choice which makes sense through the lens of where she was. Like she took a big chance with this. She had been on Smallville for a number of years, made her splash there, and got this opportunity to do this movie and reportedly said, okay, I can't make the schedules work. I'm going to leave Smallville, my solid paycheck, to launch my movie career, do this movie. And obviously, in hindsight, that was a terrible idea. But from her perspective, she's taking this role very seriously. And this movie has the flavor of being like a serious, gritty, international crime thriller. And she's playing that character, very earnest, but a lot of people criticize her as being like too flat because she is so earnest and serious.
The decision to leave Smallville, yeah, at the time probably didn't feel great when this movie was so poorly received, but she has bounced back and had a solid career, mostly in television since then. So I think maybe that's just where she's most comfortable.
Yeah, and I can see her in moments where the lines can get a little cheesy. The scenarios and dramatic moments can be a little cheesy. And I feel like I'm seeing her television chops. The TV shows are also written a little corny. And so you have to be able to deliver lines and not fall into the corniness of them. And she's good at that. On the other hand, Chris Klein took the opposite approach. Absolute night and day approach.
Is Chris Klein the best actor of all time or the worst? I leave this movie with no clear idea which is true because it's one of the two. It's nowhere in the middle.
He made a big choice. He's like, this is a cheesy ass. Okay, either he made a big choice or he didn't.
Yeah.
Either he is a naive rube who was just doing his best to play a serious role, or he's a guy who looked at the script and said, this movie is cheesy. It's a video game for kids. This character is saying all the tired cop tropes, and I'm going to lean into it. I'm going to be the biggest, cheesiest, eyebrow-raising, cynical cop character you ever saw. And he commits to that bit.
Now, I think an important question to ask as we have this discussion is, are you familiar with Chris Klein in other material?
I'm familiar with his face, but no, I have no reference for what his acting is like. So I had no basis to judge how well he's doing.
You're not like you don't remember the American Pie films very well, or because he was a big part of the first two, at least one of the main crew.
Like I remember his face from that, but I can't picture what he did in that movie.
So the rumor is his breakout role was Election, an Alexander Payne movie. Alexander Payne, you know, we covered Downsizing on the podcast. We went through his filmography. He's a serious filmmaker who mostly hits his mark with what he's trying to do.
Right.
And he apparently cast Chris Klein because he was like, I need a dumb jock for this movie. And Chris Klein was not even interested in being an actor at the time, but he was like, hey, you seem really dumb and like a jock. So would you like to be in my movie? And Chris Klein was like, yes. And then that's kind of where he's been for his entire career ever since. So it brings me no joy to say that I think he is trying his very best to be a hard-boiled cop in this movie. I know the other scenario is more heartwarming and a little more optimistic, that he made a choice to give the worst performance in the history of cinema, but I think he might just be trying to do his best job.
Yeah. I don't know. I kind of enjoyed it. It does throw you off because
it is enjoyable because it's weird. Yeah. It's fucked up and off kilter.
It's super corny. It's not just every line he delivers, but every face he delivers is heightened. There's a lot of shots that are just him raising an eyebrow, and it's like, he's just being silly. And you're like, okay, you're dragging all your colleagues in this direction, dude. Are you sure that's where everybody's ready to go?
My son noticed that he won't blink until after he says his lines. Like he's really stretching his eyes wide open, and then he gives his lines, and then he allows himself a respite and he blinks. It's almost like he's trying to to do the super intense Jake Gyllenhaal and Nightcrawler thing, but he can't quite remember not to blink all the time. It's just like he blinks 60% less than a normal person would.
That's probably his Interpol training. I think when Interpol trains its famous international cops who fly around the globe chasing organized criminals, they work on their eye skills.
It's actually just Chris Klein and Ethan Hawke. They are the only two. They're allowed to go wherever they want and do whatever they want. But no, Ian did the research. Interpol does not actually have agents. They're mostly like an administrative service to connect police departments around the globe, right? And coordinate between them. Like,
it's about local cops, and Interpol is how they talk to each other, and maybe they publish lists and stuff.
Like BuzzFeed?
Yeah.
Listicles.
Top 6 Bangkok crime lords who had their heads chopped off.
It's crazy that there's 6 of them, but there is. Chris Klein he has my favorite line in the movie, though, in this first act. When he's talking about Bison, he says, "This guy walks through the raindrops," which is actually not the saying. The saying is this guy walks between the raindrops, like he doesn't get wet even when it's pouring rain. Everybody walks through the raindrops, like that's how you walk when it's raining. So that's actually that doesn't mean anything.
No, but I guess I forgave him because I got his point, is this guy's untouchable.
But he's not. He's walking through the rain. It's touching him.
This guy doesn't care about getting damp.
We're going to have to talk about Neal McDonough as M. Bison, too, because he's another actor making some interesting choices. But we should get to Klein's counterpart in Bangkok law enforcement, the head of the Gangland Homicide Unit, which, if your police department has a division called Gangland Homicide, like, it's probably a pretty rough city.
That's a very specific unit. I guess police departments have gang units, but like Gangland, that feels very stylized.
Yeah.
That's a theatrical police department they have in Bangkok.
Well, yeah, Bloodgood is your lead detective, so it is pretty glamorous compared to what an actual police department bullpen looks like, I'm sure.
That's true.
So she is playing Detective Maya Crimson Viper Suni. Crimson Viper is a character from the games. She was a later addition to the Street Fighter game, so I'm not sure to what extent this movie is being accurate to her lore.
Okay.
It feels like we don't need Maya and Charlie both. One of the two would have sufficed just to have a cop kind of learning things with us and being an audience surrogate to some extent. But they actually do have like decent chemistry, and I think it added another dimension to the movie because there's really no other romance to speak of except for this kind of will they, won't they thing going on with these two.
Thank goodness they had a little actual chemistry on screen because it softened would have otherwise been a very uncomfortable sexual assault that the Charlie Nash character pulls on his colleague. They do that trope, which this movie is all about doing tropes. They do the trope where the two of them are staking out the bad guys, and in order to not be spotted, they pretend to be a romantic couple. So he, without warning, leans over and makes out with her for 30 seconds while the bad guys are 200 yards away, and there's no real reason to pull this move. But yeah, she does not slap him. She does not file a HR complaint against him. She kind of likes it.
Yeah. As far as we know, they never actually seal the deal, but there's a lot of tension, and you can use your imagination here. But yeah, they are, I guess you can theorize that Bison would know who Charlie is if he really has been chasing him for this long. He might be familiar with his face. But yeah, they're clear across like a crowded city square. I don't think anyone's going to notice them in their car, even though isn't it like it's a flashy car they're driving though, isn't it? I can't remember what model it is, but
some kind of BMW or something.
Yeah, it is. It does stand out a little bit.
But he could have ducked down. That was the alternative instead of kissing his colleague.
I think they make out for like 30 seconds.
Yeah, it's really long.
It's not a peck. It's an extended French kiss.
And at such a distance, he could have just turned and faced her from near her lips, right? No one would have been able to tell the difference from the other side. But he goes at it, and it's inappropriate. But
then he wouldn't have got to make out with Bloodgood, and he wanted to do that.
Yeah.
Sometimes you got to do. No, that's not true. You don't have to do it.
You never have to do that.
Whatever it takes to make out with Bloodgood. You should get consent and only kiss Bloodgood if she explicitly invites it.
Thank you for clarifying.
Yes, that's important. But this police procedural that we have going on here and the mystical martial arts movie we have going on never really feel like they come together in a satisfying way.
No, you're right. It's too much of two different big stories. These guys are doing a bunch of investigating in a gritty street level way. And then meanwhile, as we'll get to in the second act, Chun-Li is doing some crazy ass mystical kung fu shit where she's forming balls of lightning and stuff. And so they're really a different tone.
Yeah, and Charlie and Chun-Li do have some scenes together and they reach an understanding and they both factor heavily into the big action sequence at the end of the movie. It doesn't feel like Maya and Chun-Li ever really connect with each other. I don't think they ever even have any lines together, do they?
That's a good point. That's to your point that Maya is extraneous because you could have had the guy cop have some sexual tension with Chun-Li as he starts to increasingly run into her as they're both investigating the same guy from their own perspective.
I don't know. Do you think Charlie can roll his shoulders in a seductive enough way to get Chun-Li interested in him?
Man, shoulder rolling is something this movie takes seriously, as we're about to find out.
Yeah, is it time to get into Act 2 so we can talk about that in more detail?
Yeah, let's go out on the town and see what happens next.
Chun-Li is now under the tutelage of Gen, who tells her a startling revelation. Her father is still alive and being held captive by M. Bison. She wants to find and rescue him immediately, but Gen tells her she has to be patient. First, she must undergo his mystical martial arts training and master her anger. As Chun-Li trains, the cops, Nash and Maya, continue to track down M. Bison, who uses kidnapping and extortion to take full control of the powerful Shadaloo crime syndicate, as well as the Esperanto Real Estate Corporation. Thanks to a Shadaloo-sponsored crime wave, waterfront real estate prices have plummeted, and the Esperanto group is given permission to buy up and develop a huge portion of the slums. Our heroes' paths begin to cross as Chun-Li confronts Bison's CFO Cantana in a Bangkok nightclub, while Maya and Nash stake the place out from the street. Chun-Li forces Cantana to tell her about the White Rose, a mysterious shipment coming in from Russia. After a furious and deadly fight with Bison's men, Chun-Li escapes the club. Back at Gen's hideout, Gen tells Chun-Li the origin story of Bison, who as a young man sacrificed his pregnant wife in an arcane ritual. In return, Dark Forces freed Bison from his conscience, transferring any goodness he possessed into the body of his newborn daughter, allowing Bison to become a powerful and perfectly ruthless criminal. Now in retaliation for the nightclub incident, Bison strikes back. First he kills Cantana for betraying his secrets. Then he blows up Gen's hideout while Chun-Li is out shopping. Then he sends the masked assassin Vega to kill Chun-Li herself. But she gets the drop on Vega and defeats him with her newly honed fighting skills. Then she goes down to the docks looking for the White Rose, but it's a setup, and she's captured by Bison and his men. Bison had promised Chun-Li's father he'd get to see his daughter again, and so he does. But as Chun-Li sits tied up and helpless, Bison breaks her father's neck, ending his life mere inches from his daughter's face.
That sounds harsh.
It's a little harsh. Bison's not a nice guy. I do think it's funny that he was like, I will murder my pregnant wife, and that will help me be a really successful real estate developer.
Yes.
It does not feel like the juice is worth the squeeze, so to speak.
Man, there's so much to talk about. But yes, the movie gets very dark, and we'll go through all the dark turns it starts to take in the second act. But yeah, that whole origin story makes M. Bison sound like he's going to be a mystically powerful character, right? Like he's doing deals with cave demons in Thailand and ritually sacrificing his young pregnant wife. And it just makes him like a more cutthroat businessman. Like, unlike the other side, Gen and Chun-Li, who are actually doing supernatural stuff and forming balls of lightning with their hands and doing impossible things, M. Bison stays totally grounded, doesn't he?
For the most part, yeah. I mean, every fight scene in this movie has some feats that would be considered superhuman, but they seem to adhere to the reality the movie's taking place in, at least. They don't feel like they would be far-fetched given what else we've seen regular people do in this movie. Yeah, there's no indication he's really supernatural. I found his whole character to be reminiscent of Judge Doom from Who Framed Roger Rabbit mostly.
Okay.
Because they're both over-the-top, evil, psychotic characters, but then didn't Judge Doom just want to like build a freeway?
Oh, yeah.
Their master plans are like gentrification, which is like, it does ground the movie a little more in some kind of reality.
That was interesting when that became clear that M. Bison's real thing was pretty pedestrian. He does it in a little bit over the top way. He starts his own crime wave in order to drive the prices down, and he abducts the city council's children in order to get permission to move forward on his purchase and redevelopment of the slums. But other than that, he really just wants to make money by developing real estate.
One of my favorite things this movie seems to be positing is that Irish accents are genetically passed down. We know Bison is born to Irish parents, but he has almost no relationship to them. He's raised in Bangkok around Thai people. He does not seem to have any contact with his Irish family. We don't even think he's ever been back to Ireland, but
Right.
Still as a 40-something-year-old man, he's got a thick Irish brogue for some fucking reason. And you were like, is Neal McDonough just Irish? And they were like, we don't want to make him not do his Irish accent. But no, Neal McDonough's from fucking Dorchester, Massachusetts,
Okay.
which I guess is as close to Ireland as you can get in America.
It's pretty good. It's the best we got.
So that's all I can think is that the writers and directors of this movie believe that accents are just genetically passed down.
Maybe that's his one mystical power, is that he absorbed his ancestors' manner of speech. I agree that it kind of helps. Like, you can't have Neal McDonough do a Thai accent. That would be really weird. And he has a striking look, right? If people don't know who we're talking about, once you see the guy, this is a guy whose look you'll recognize: blonde hair and very bright blue eyes.
He's probably been the main bad guy of a season of your favorite television show. I know he's been on one of mine. He was Robert Quarles, the big bad of season 3 of a little show called Justified. And that's our Justified crossover of the week.
Justified crossover of the week.
Begorra.
And yeah, there was a lot of talking in that season about his striking blue eyes, like a husky, I believe one character says, and also his big, stupid baby head, which is how another character describes him in Justified. It feels like everyone was making fun of how big his head is in that show, to the point where it felt like, this is all speculation on my part, but I don't think like the cast and crew liked him. So they were just like, we're just going to ad lib lines about how stupid and big his head is.
That's funny. Nobody talks down to M. Bison in this. He is uncontested as a scary, serious bad guy.
But, you know, for the man who played Robert Quarles, I do have a quarrel with him. He is one of these Hollywood Christians who refuses to do love scenes or even kiss another actress out of respect for his wife. But he literally beats one to death and tortures her in this movie. It's like, where's the line of what is acceptable treatment of women in your mind?
That is a tough part in this movie. That was the one that made me really go, whoa. And it's shot intentionally to make you go, what the fuck?
You think he's hitting a punching bag at first, and then there's like a big blood splatter.
Yeah, him and Balrog are like working out, and you see them and like, oh, he's just hitting this punching bag. You don't see what he's punching. And then he's punching the hanging dead body of his CFO, Cantana, who we just saw dancing sexy in a nightclub the night before. And it's fucking rough. And apparently the blood splatter is only in the unrated DVD release. That seems like something that they had to censor out that blood splatter to get their PG-13 in the theatrical.
Yeah. And Cantana, we learn, even though she's a CFO, also a highly trained martial artist, which is another one of my favorite threads of this movie, is that everybody, no matter what their job actually is, a highly trained martial artist in their own right.
I guess that's not hard to go with in a martial arts movie that you're like, I want it to be Street Fighter. I want everybody to be an interesting and different, talented fighter. It's ridiculous from the standpoint of the serious international crime thriller aspect of the movie. But if you remember, it's called Street Fighter. You're like, oh, okay, everyone's going to be a fighter.
Yeah, we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves because we haven't even really talked about the nightclub scene yet that leads to Cantana's death. So Chun-Li is basically trying to honeypot Cantana, who I guess we're just supposed to surmise is a gay woman, or at least bisexual, based on her interactions with Chun-Li. They get up close to each other in the club, and then they start rolling their shoulders at each other in kind of a ritualistic dance battle, but also a flirty way.
It's this very low-key type of dancing where they're like not putting out too much energy. You know, it's like when you want to look cool on the dance floor, not bust out any big moves, but just kind of groove in place. And so they're just grooving on each other for a while.
Let me see you bounce right and left and let your shoulder. Hey, let your shoulder. Just let your shoulder.
It's very chill like that, but you do sense some tension, and that's why Cantana follows, or one of them follows the other into the bathroom.
Chun-Li goes to the bathroom. Cantana follows her, maybe looking to get into some sexy time, but Chun-Li just bashes her face into a fucking sink a few times, and then they start fighting. It's a pretty good fight. It's one of the better fights in the movie, I would say.
Yeah, I immediately thought of other public bathroom fights and who would take the crown. We've got Chun-Li, we've got Daniel Craig in Casino Royale, and we've seen our boy Henry Cavill do it a couple times.
Now, does Henry Cavill get a chance to cock his arms as if they were shotguns? You know the move I'm referring to.
Yes, you're saying if you put them all in the same public bathroom to see who wins?
I'm going Cavill if he has a chance to cock his arms. If not, then maybe Chun-Li because she can do fireballs and Bond just has a gun.
I rewatched that Casino Royale bathroom fight scene, and it's the one that sort of establishes the new generation of Bond as being dirtier
brutal.
And messier and uglier than we were come to expect. So that scene's very grimy. It's very brutal. Cavill in Mission Impossible is very polished. It most resembles this scene in terms of being shiny and high production value and hard hitting. But I was surprised how much Chun-Li does some arm twisting to Cantana, and she catches her arm through this hole in the glass brick wall, torques it in a painful way. There's some good brutal stuff.
Yeah, and Chun-Li, in case you were wondering if she's only brutal in hand-to-hand combat, the answer is no. She straight up is executing dudes. In this nightclub scene, she shoots a guy square in the chest at point-blank range. Not the Chun-Li I knew from the video games.
No.
She was not a gun-toting assassin, but they had to edge her up for the late aughts.
Yeah, that was another unexpected dark twist, because she is kicking these henchmen's asses with her martial arts skills, and she flips this one guy onto his back, and instead of leaving him there or maybe doing the traditional sort of knock him out cold and leave him there, she grabs his gun and just shoots him dead in the chest while he's lying on the ground. I'm like, that was an execution.
Was not expecting that. But so now we're in a full-blown like mass casualty event at the nightclub, and Charlie and Maya are just sitting outside in a car in case something happens, and they fall asleep during all of this.
Charlie does. I wonder if that was a Chris Klein ad lib that like she goes, Charlie, there's something going down, and he's like, what? Waking up, like falling asleep on his stakeout.
As gunshots have been ringing for like several minutes by now too. They're not great at their jobs, as we can tell. Let's talk quickly about Robin Shou as Gen, the leader of the Order of the Web, not Madam Web. That was Las Arañas.
Oh,
Very
yeah.
different.
Interesting, though, that web societies in both movies are designed to protect the downtrodden.
Yeah. Spiders famously anti-capitalist, so it makes them. They don't even use money.
So they play up the Order of the Web in this, and he keeps talking about, oh, it's a powerful secret society that fights injustice. And in the end, it's kind of just him, right?
Just him and two old ladies, yeah.
There's two different old ladies. They have a different tattoo because they're just like apprentices. They have a little spider tattoo on their hands.
If they're apprentices, I don't think they're going to make it to the full rank because they're both about 90 years old.
Yeah, and they're just kind of like his spies or his contacts on the street level. But yeah, like he takes her to his headquarters. He's like, wouldn't you like to join the order? We do so much good work here. And it's just like his pad.
Yeah, he just beats up 4 guys. He's like, look at all the good work we've done. We've saved this city. Okay. But Robin Shou, he has got bona fides in fighting game adaptations. He was Liu Kang in the original Mortal Kombat movies from the 90s, the Paul W.S. Anderson ones.
Okay.
Or at least, I don't know if Paul W.S. Anderson did the sequel, but Robin Shou was in both.
I heard that he's well loved for that. I didn't see those movies, but he does get some respect.
I remember taping. I convinced my mom to let me order Mortal Kombat on pay-per-view, and then we were trying to figure out how to tape it off the, because there were some kind of protections built into pay-per-view, or you weren't supposed to be able to tape off of it.
Oh, did it work? Did you get a copy?
I think we figured it out, yeah.
Nice.
But then I think I just ended up getting the official VHS a couple months later when it was released, so.
Oh, okay.
I didn't need it anymore. Yeah, so Robin Shou, I was like, he looks very different. Didn't recognize him right away, but now that once I found out, I could totally see it.
Yeah, I feel like he's playing a little older than the actor actually is in this movie, right? Like
I think you're right.
They're kind of graying him up at the edges a little bit because he's not supposed to be a romantic foil for the young Chun-Li. He's supposed to be the wise, older guru.
Yeah, and he plays the part, but he's obviously still young enough to do a lot of his own stunts. His fight scenes are some of the ones where there's less cutting because I think the actor is capable of doing a lot of this himself. So it's easier to do it and not have to worry about showing the face of the stunt person.
He's got the real skills to back it up. And yeah, he's very likable. His lines are as corny as anybody's, but somehow I like to see that. Maybe because it feels more natural, like martial arts movies that I love from Hong Kong cinema. So like it gels better.
Yeah. Speaking of gelling better, no, that's not a good segue. So Bison murders his wife in a cave and pulls a baby out of her.
Yeah. In another brutal moment.
In this adaptation of a pretty lighthearted video game series. And another blood splatter on Bison that was added back in for the unedited version.
He's kneeling over his pregnant wife's belly, and you just see a close-up on his face, and you hear the grossest squish sound, which you realize is him with his bare hands tearing into her abdomen. Another pretty rough moment for this cartoonish movie.
Bison, not a nice man. More evidence to that point. This was egregious. Yeah, it was a little bit much. There's a couple scenes I made my son leave the room for during this movie, and this was definitely one of them.
Oh, good call.
Even though you really don't see anything, I was just like, I don't want to have to answer questions about what's happening here.
No, you absolutely don't. But it also begs the question, like, he was doing this in order that the dark spirits of the cave would make his soul like perfectly evil.
If you're able to do that, you're already perfectly evil.
Exactly. It's like a trick played by the spirits of the cave. They're like, we don't have to actually do anything for you, buddy, because what you just did sealed the deal.
The greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he didn't exist. And the second greatest trick he ever pulled was making M. Bison think he needed to pull his baby out of his pregnant wife with his bare hands to become more evil somehow.
Yes. And the lore somehow is like, that made her more good, right?
She got all his goodness, but like that couldn't have been that much.
It wasn't much goodness, but I guess she's slightly more good than she would have been.
This movie is so half-assed. It's like he's got this mystical powers. He's going to use it to be a real estate developer. He transferred some amount of goodness into his daughter, but like she still just seems like a normal person.
But then in the end, she's his weakness. He still cares about her. Well, why is that? He doesn't have any goodness left. Why does he care? All his goodness is in her. She should care about him, but he shouldn't give a shit about her.
He should have just killed her immediately in the cave because he would recognize if he became the ruthless businessman he set out to be, that she would eventually be a distraction for him. And that would,
right.
But we'll have to get to the whole a daughter is her father's greatest weakness thing this movie keeps positing.
Yes.
Because it really doesn't make sense in the last act the way it plays out, but we'll get there. For now, let's get it started. Let's get it started in here. Talking about the Vega and Chun-Li fight. Vega here played by none other than Taboo from the Black Eyed Peas for some fucking reason.
Yeah, fun little stunt casting that I guess...
He's in a mask for 99% of his screen time too, which is even... I was like, maybe they wanted to use a Black Eyed Peas song in the movie and they negotiated some kind of thing with Taboo, but no, it's all Ace Hood doing the music for this movie, as you correctly pointed out.
But yeah, then Taboo pops up and you're right, they keep him off screen because not only is he a character who wears a mask most of the time, he does a lot of his stuff like intentionally off screen. Like he's the one who kills the heads of the crime families, but that scene is enacted while you're looking at Bison and hearing their screams from outside.
Yeah, we see the aftermath of Vega's actions a lot. We don't actually see him do much, which is why it's funny when he confronts Chun-Li and you think it's going to be this big knock him down brawl. It's like a 20-second fight scene and she just kicks the shit out of him.
She kicks his ass so fast. I was like, this is the one part of the movie that surprised me with something that I didn't expect because they lean into the trope. Here comes the scary bad guy. There's all those moments of the Bison going, I'm calling in the big guns type of thing. And then there's some tension as he's stalking her.
Reminiscent of The Punisher, which we covered many moons ago. They kept calling in different colorful henchmen.
And this is a very colorful one. If people don't remember Vega from the games, he's got a shiny silver mask and a triple-bladed claw. It's fairly horror-esque and intimidating.
Hold on, because this Vega has very little to do with the Vega from the game, I would say. The Vega from the game, he has a mask and he has a claw. That's where the similarities end. He is dressed more as like a matador type figure in the games. He's shirtless. He's got these kind of baggy pants, and he's a cage fighter, but he's a very flamboyant one. And his whole thing is that he's so beautiful, he has to wear a mask so he doesn't injure his face when he fights. And that's why I think the Vega character in this movie is where a lot of fans of the game had their biggest complaints. It felt like they included him just to have a character named Vega who evokes the game character, but he's a fan favorite. And that's one thing the 94 movie also did much better, is make him feel like his counterpart in the games.
Yeah, now I didn't understand that was essential to his character, but I did happen to see that clip from the 94 one where he takes off his mask, and it is a very handsome man. He has a big toothy grin. And then in this movie, he takes off his mask.
And it's Taboo from the Black Eyed Peas.
Chun-Li doesn't call that out, but she does call him ugly, right? She goes, I see why you wear the mask. You're an ugly motherfucker. She doesn't say that word because it's PG-13.
Yeah, PG-13, even though we have hand abortions happening. Not abortions because she lives, hand C-sections. Yeah, so that was a bit of an egregious character assassination that the movie did. It almost feels like Taboo pissed somebody off. Because then they also dangle his body from the side of the building like Mussolini. It's pretty brutal.
Does she kill him, or does she just humiliate him by knocking him out and hanging him by his
Balrog says, oh yeah, she beat up Vega. He doesn't say like she killed Vega. So
okay,
I assume he lives, which is weird because she executed a guy not 5 minutes earlier.
She could have easily killed him based on what we know about her. Can I use this moment to drop a little fun fact I learned about the Street Fighter lore as we're talking about Vega and Balrog and M. Bison?
Please do.
I hope this is true because it's a really good story. Originally, the character we now know as Vega, the cage fighter with the mask, was supposed to be called Balrog. The character that we know as Balrog, a large African-American boxer, was originally supposed to be called M. Bison because he was inspired by Mike Tyson.
So his name was Mike Bison.
And the character named M. Bison was called Vega because, I don't know, because he was a Latin American dictator. I'm not sure how that all connects. They did a three-way name swap, and it kind of makes sense when you line the names back up in the original way, but now they're so fully ingrained that we just accept the way they are.
I guess in Street Fighter in Japan, Bison is still named Vega.
Oh.
That was only,
okay.
Yeah, they updated it for the American release, but they kept the original naming for those two characters, at least in Japan.
That makes sense. Yeah, they were worried that releasing it here that would cause Mike Tyson to notice and sue them.
Yeah, and Balrog, a pretty overt Tolkien reference, kind of interesting.
Which I can't connect to.
It's just a badass
anything.
Word, I guess.
It's just a cool word, yeah, to borrow. I don't blame them for.
I don't think Michael Clark Duncan is portraying the Flame of Udin. The Dark Fire will not avail him, so probably shouldn't worry about it. And then this is a tough act, man. This section of the movie is full of some fucked up scenes. Chun-Li's dad getting murdered is overtly cruel. It's a really fucked up moment.
He's been waiting 15 years or whatever with the promise of seeing his daughter again. He's been forced to help Bison this whole time with his business acumen and his contacts. That's the story. And he keeps stringing him along with the idea that your daughter's still out there and we're showing you pictures and videos of her and you get to meet her again. And they have a sort of a tearful reunion, although both those actors are kind of weird about, like, I didn't feel like that was the way a father and daughter would look at each other when they saw each other after 15 years. But It was tough circumstances. She was tied to a chair and he was held captive too.
Yeah, but then she's also just recently learned that he's even alive still. She thought he was dead for the last 15 years. Then she finds out he's alive. The first time she sees him, he gets his neck snapped right in front of her.
Like inches from her face. It's really grotesque when you think about it. And they kind of cartoon it up a little bit. And it's a classic trope of all you have to do is turn a guy's head to break his neck and sever his spine.
Was that famous tweet from, I think it was Vineyville? It was like, I sneak up behind a guard and try to snap his neck and just make him turn to the left very quickly.
I love that trope.
My favorite part of it is they take Chun-Li's father's body out of the room and then two goons come in and Michael Clark Duncan as Balrog just says, make it quick, and leaves. If they're going to make it quick, why don't you just stay to make sure it works? Because of course she immediately escapes and kills these guys and then is free. It's just a lot of another thing that really feels regressive. That whole idea of like, I'm not going to stick around for 10 seconds. They could just shoot her in the head and be done with it. But they have to taunt her and dangle her upside down for some fucking reason.
And if part of the killing is that, oh, we need to draw this out, which they kind of hint to, right? One of the henchmen goes, should I kill you quick or should I do the cutting in first?
No, so yeah, should I wait till you're dead to cut you up or something? Yeah.
Okay, yeah. It's something insinuating that the reason they didn't just shoot her in the back of the head or snap her neck with a very quick, easy neck twist is that they wanted to do something more evil. But then why does the nobody get to do the evil stuff? Why doesn't either Bison or Balrog get the joy of doing the evil?
Yeah, Bison's the most evil. He murdered his wife so that he could be the most evil real estate developer. That's a high bar. All right, you ready to take us home, Ian?
Here we go. Bison and Balrog take off, leaving the job of killing the captive Chun-Li to a couple of low-level henchmen. So, of course, she overpowers them and escapes. And a mob of angry citizens help distract her pursuers so that she can get away. Then it turns out that Gen was not killed in that explosion we saw earlier. He finds Chun-Li in an alley, and he takes her to a new hideout where he heals her wounds while the two prepare to intercept Bison's mysterious White Rose when it arrives at the harbor the following night. Chun-Li tells Nash about the ship too, and he sets his men up in the harbor master's office to stake things out. Then Nash and his men are joined by Maya and a team of gangland homicide SWAT officers. And none too soon, because just then Bison's men launch an all-out assault on the cops. As the battle rages above, Gen and Chun-Li sneak onto the ships at the docks below. Gen runs into Balrog, and after an epic battle, Gen impales his huge opponent on a refrigerant pipe, instantly freezing him to death. Meanwhile, Chun-Li has seen a beautiful young lady on the ship, and Gen figures out that the girl must be Bison's daughter, and that she's the White Rose. But in all the fighting, Bison has taken the girl and escaped in a chopper. So they all head up to Bison's private compound for a final showdown. They infiltrate the home, and while Gen confronts Bison and they begin to fight, Nash sneaks into Bison's safe room and spirits the daughter away. Realizing this, Bison starts to go looking for her, but Gen catches up to him and they fight some more, until Bison fully sidelines Gen by impaling his thigh on a piece of rebar. But that's when Chun-Li attacks. Chun-Li and Bison have their own epic battle, and it looks like he's getting the better of her until she turns the tide and blasts him with a ball of lightning, just like Gen taught her to do. As he lies there dazed, Bison sees Nash leading his daughter Rose across the compound, and in this moment, as Bison is distracted by his one weakness, Chun-Li strikes her final blow, killing Bison by twisting his head fully around backward as his daughter looks on in shock. Then, as more cops are arriving, Nash lets Chun-Li disappear back into the night. Later on, we see that Chun-Li has returned to her family home in Hong Kong, where she wants to settle down and live a peaceful life. But Gen appears, and he tells her about an upcoming mysterious martial arts tournament that they just might have to look into.
Real fucking Surf Dracula ass ending we got going on here for a movie called Street Fighter, for the Street Fighter tournament to finally be teased in the final scene of the movie.
Yes, it literally says Street Fighter tournament on the newspaper ad that Gen brings over.
And the newest Mortal Kombat movie from like 2022, I think it was, did the same thing. The first movie is all about setting up the tournament, and then the second one is when the tournament actually happens. Can we stop doing this, please?
Yeah, that is, in this day and age, even in 2009, it's like, my God, do you really want to set your audience up for such a groaner in the final moments?
I did not appreciate that. And of course, we never saw it come to fruition. For good reason. This movie made $12 million on its $50 million budget, so there was no chance a sequel was ever happening.
Sorry. And then Bison's already dead, and they point that out in that scene. She's like, but Bison's dead. What's the fucking point of a Street Fighter tournament?
Balrog's dead. Vega's still probably dangling from that building. You're going to have a thin roster to work with of bad guys. I guess Sagat could be the main villain if you wanted to go that route, because he's kind of the second big bad.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, before we get up to the ending, let's talk about Michael Clark Duncan as Balrog. Michael Clark Duncan, of course, the original Kingpin on screen, the character in the 2003, I want to say, Ben Affleck Daredevil movie.
I didn't know that.
He's looking a little more trim in this movie. He's always been a hulking, muscular gentleman, and he's certainly still got an imposing physicality, but he's certainly slimmed down a little bit by this time.
Yeah, he looks good. He feels like he's in his prime, and he does what you hire him to do in your movie, which is liven up a big cartoonishly imposing character.
He does bring a little extra flair to this guy. There's a scene where when they're blowing up Gen's house in Act 2, he's like, fire the rockets. And his little henchman is like, but our guys are still in there. He's, I'll do it myself. And he grabs the rocket launcher and he's just like giggling the whole time. It's like, not only is this guy going to kill his own people, but he's ecstatic about it too. It does bring a nice, surprising air of levity to that sequence.
Yeah, and that feels like Michael Clark Duncan bringing that. I don't think the giggles are in the script, personally. I feel like he's making this character his own form of joyous, evil villain.
Very sadly, only 3 years after this movie came out, he passed away from a heart attack. 54 years old, young man.
Gone way too soon. What a loss.
R.I.P. By all accounts, a lovely man, too, from everyone who's ever spoken about him.
That's nice to to know.
Yeah, and his fight with Gen is pretty good. It's got a lot of hints at some history between the two. Gen, of course, used to work with Bison, so that also reinforces that Balrog's been with him since the beginning.
Right.
And these two were probably friends and then rivals, and they've clearly fought before because Balrog mentions that he's a lot slower than he remembered.
Yeah.
That's just some solid low-lift world building.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good aspect of the design of this story. But I guess climaxes of movies, I'm always complaining about the obligatory nature. Like, you always see what's coming and you're like, you know who the big fighters are on each side, and they're going to have their big showdowns in the third act. And so it always feels like none of it really surprises you or takes you somewhere that you didn't already know you were going.
Yeah, it can start getting fatiguing after a while, too, when there's 3 separate fight scenes happening and you're just checking in on all of them as the movie progresses because, it doesn't stick with one fight the entire way through except for Bison and Chun-Li, which is a fight scene I really disliked because that's the one where the cuts become super evident that they're working with a lot of stunt people and trying to work around that issue.
Yeah, it's interesting. I did read that Kristin Kreuk actually did study wushu, like she has some martial arts skills, although obviously like it's full of really big stunts. It's a wire kung fu movie. And so like you mentioned before, there's a lot of moves that aren't real that involve flipping and flying through the air. And we got to assume that Neal McDonough's martial arts skills aren't great. And so you needed to cut in a stuntman quite a bit for him.
He's believable throwing punches. He looks like he could have been a boxer. He's got that kind of build as well. But yeah, anything more agile than that, he's going to be tagging in his stuntman for sure.
Yeah. And I would say, so here's where I have my little contrary argument to you. I will agree that it's in the fully super fast cutting style, which is more contemporary Hollywood than traditional Hong Kong style, which like to leave the martial arts unedited on screen. But the one thing that sort of won me over to the choreography style is someone took the effort to give each of these signature characters very strong theatrical poses, right? So they do these big strikes, and the actors, to their credit, they are on screen for those moments. So they'll do one big kick or one big punch, and they'll kind of stop in a pose, and it feels video gamey. And it's not realistic fighting, but something about that theatricality of it was appealing to me. And I feel like it was more than just a lot of blurry whipping around on screen. It was like striking poses, and that kind of works for me to communicate the theatricality of these fighters.
Well, I guess 2 things can be true.
Yes.
Yeah, they're nailing the character-heavy aspect of the fights, making everybody feel distinct from each other because they have these signature poses and moves. But everything in between feels very tough to track where they exist in space because they're cutting around it so much.
Yeah, it's hyped up with a lot of fast cuts and blurry motion and close-ups of feet flying across the screen or big bamboo sticks swinging through the air.
And then we twist Bison's head straight around like an owl. And that's when we get the 3rd or 4th time this line is dropped in the movie of every father's weakness is his daughter. But Bison is like laying on his back, indisposed, and sees his daughter across the pier or whatever. But like, he looks like he might be paralyzed already at this point. So like, his daughter being there didn't actually cause him to lose the fight at all. And he still knows Chun-Li is jumping at him from 40 feet in the air and is going to land on his fucking head. So I don't see how his daughter factored into this whole process at all.
No, it's kind of symbolic. It doesn't actually turn the tide of the battle because I guess for better or worse, they let Chun-Li turn the tide with her martial arts skills. She's kind of on the losing end, and then she gets clever and she gets powerful and she makes this big lightning ball, and that kind of wipes him out, right? And then you're right, he's just incapacitated when she goes in for the execution.
So yeah, not really tracking what the daughter's involvement in that fight was. But then Chun-Li is nice and she says, make sure she has a nice life or whatever, a real life. And Charlie's like, you too, while blinking less than a normal person would. But then you just jumped on her dad's head from fucking like 40 feet in the air, twisted it around. That's her villain origin story if I've ever heard one. Like, she's going to try to kill you in 10 years.
Yeah, Rose, they don't dwell on it, but they show that Rose is watching her father be killed by Chun-Li, which is fitting justice for Chun-Li because she had to watch her father be killed by Bison. But Rose didn't deserve it. She's the good one.
Right. She's innocent in all this. She's been living on a ship, I think, for a while. So she barely even knows what's going on.
Just sailing around the North Seas for 15 years. And then, Chun-Li acts like she didn't do anything bad there. She's, I hope Rose has a good life, even though I just traumatized her beyond belief for my own revenge purposes, which the whole point of Gen training her was to like make her spiritual and let her release that anger. But her final act is the most angry, vengeful thing you could possibly imagine.
Lest we forget, she shot a guy in the chest like a couple days ago, too, right. Point blank, who was already on the ground and probably incapacitated himself. She did not take all these teachings to heart, I think.
She did not. No, Gen has to feel really bad that his student is turning into, it's more of a Darth Vader situation, right? She he trained her thinking he could do something good for her, and she's pretty ruthless in the end.
So that's Street Fighter, The Legend of Chun-Li. Would you like to hear where some of these people ended up?
Yes, this is one where you actually go, where are they now?
Yeah, because like we mentioned, this movie made $12.8 million on a $50 million budget. That is a total loss. It was released on February 27th, and it wasn't pre-screened for critics, so I don't think anybody was too surprised that they had a flop on their hands, but maybe they weren't prepared for this degree of floppiness. So Andrzej Bartkowiak, best known as a top-tier cinematographer. Like I mentioned, he worked a lot with Sidney Lumet. Some of his projects were Princes of the City, Terms of Endearment, Twins, Falling Down, The Devil's Advocate, 13 Days. So those are some real heavy hitter movies.
For sure. Yeah, that's serious stuff.
His first three movies that he directed starred Jet Li and then DMX and then Jet Li and DMX. It was Romeo Must Die, Exit Wounds, and Cradle to the Grave. The first two were modest successes financially, but were pretty hated by critics. And then the third was a modest failure financially and also hated by critics. And then he got a bigger budget, made the doomed video game adaptation, Doom, with Carl Urban and The Rock and Rosamund Pike.
Famous action star.
What's going on here? That movie had a $70 million budget and only made 58. So not quite as bad as Street Fighter, but not great either way.
Yeah.
Then came this movie, and that was pretty much it for him as a director. His next two movies would be a Russian action movie called Maximum Impact and the action thriller Dead Reckoning, neither of which were released theatrically. And he has not worked since 2020 when Dead Reckoning was released. He's probably retired now. He's an older gentleman. He's been working since the 70s. But yeah, he was not a great success as a director.
Oh, well.
But yeah, it's not for everybody. Written by Justin Marks, who also didn't have a great film writing career. He wrote this, and he wrote the 2016 Jungle Book remake that was directed by Jon Favreau, I believe.
Okay.
But then out of nowhere, he got a story credit on Top Gun Maverick, so that was a little feather in his cap.
Interesting.
His TV career has been more fruitful. He created the underrated sci-fi thriller Counterpart with J.K. Simmons, and just to prove he does understand Asian culture, kind of, he recently created the FX series Shogun, which is great. I don't know if you watched that one.
I heard great things about Shogun, and I remember watching the original network TV miniseries back in the day, and that was like a big deal at the time. And I meant to watch this because I heard it was so good. So that Justin Marks really came a long way and getting his flowers now.
To stick with the video game references, he leveled up, so to speak.
He did.
Yes, Shogun only has one season out so far, but it's already been renewed for a second and third season. I think it's very expensive and very time consuming to produce. I believe they film in Japan. And season 2, though, may be out by the end of the year. We'll see.
Cool. I have to check that one out.
So Kristin Kreuk, we mentioned best known for her role on Smallville, where she starred as Lana Lang. She'd also been in future episode Eurotrip as the villainous Fiona, the girlfriend who starts the whole series of events that trigger the titular trip to Europe.
Okay.
She never really starred in any notable films after this. She has had a long and fruitful career on TV. I'm saying the word fruitful a lot today. She starred in shows like Chuck, Beauty and the Beast, Burden of Truth, Reacher, and most recently, Murder in a Small Town.
She's working.
Yeah, she's working. Chris Klein broke out in Alexander Payne's Election before finding the role that would define his career, Chris Oz Ostreicher in the American Pie films. He also didn't have a big movie role after this, but he did recently star in 2025's Fear Street Prom Queen, so he is getting back into it. That was a Netflix release, but still, it was pretty high profile.
Yeah, I remember hearing about those Fear Street shows. Is it a show or a series
of movies? Series of movies, yeah, but they were released, I think, one a year for 3 years.
Okay.
And then he also starred in the FX show Wilford, if you remember, with Elijah Wood.
Oh, neat.
And Wilford the Dog Man, the man dog.
Yeah.
And then he had main roles on The Flash and Sweet Magnolias in the last couple of years, so he may be having a bit of a comeback.
Good for him.
He's definitely an actor. I don't know. Trying to say something nice.
We still don't know how to make sense of him, but go Chris Klein.
I will never say no to watching a Chris Klein movie just because I'm so curious. If
that's a real accomplishment for him, then.
I want to know, is he the best or worst actor of all time? Neal McDonough, he's been acting since the early 90s. I first remember seeing him in Angels in the Outfield, which has an absolutely crazy stacked cast for some reason, starring none other than JGL, Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
Okay.
Danny Glover and Gary Busey, I think.
Nice.
Matthew McConaughey.
Wow.
I'm just doing this off memory. I'm not looking up, so I could have gotten some of these wrong, but I'm pretty sure. He was also in Star Trek First Contact, Minority Report, Walking Tall, the remake with The Rock, Flags of Our Fathers, Sonic the Hedgehog, and Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City. But he's also a well-known villain on television shows. He's been on shows like Boomtown, Medical Investigation. He was the big bad in My Beloved Terriers.
Okay.
As you recall. Justified, of course, as we mentioned. Suits, the CW Arrowverse shows, Green Arrow, The Flash, all that stuff.
Wow.
And most recently, Tulsa King, the Taylor Sheridan, Sylvester Stallone mob drama set in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Right.
Most of his movie roles now are of the Angel Studios direct-to-streaming variety, I assume because he's a devout Christian and wants to raise the profile of some of those movies.
Sure.
But loves playing dudes who just murder women. I don't know.
Interesting clash within that man and his work.
That's The Legend of Chun-Li. Do you remember remember what we're doing next?
No.
Or am I going to surprise you?
My brain is a blank slate, as always.
I'm excited about this one. This is our first time covering a pretty high-profile director and an actor that I'm a fan of. We're going to be doing the 2019 Clint Eastwood directed biodrama Richard Jewell, starring Paul Walter Hauser.
Wow.
You remember when this movie came out, right? About the gentleman at the 1996 Summer Olympics in Atlanta who finds the bomb and then gets blamed for it.
Talk about actors you don't understand. I still don't understand Paul Walter Hauser because he's flipped between the most serious and the most ridiculous comedic roles. And at this point when this came out, I had only just the vaguest impression of who he was. So I had no idea what to make of this movie, but I'm actually a fan of his now, and I'm excited to see what this movie's like.
Yeah, he never stays for the sleepover, but he does seem like a good actor, at least when Jamie Taco's not stealing all his lines.
I know. I hope no one steals all his lines in this movie.
Also a professional wrestler now, Paul Walter Hauser.
Really?
Yeah,
wow.
he's an interesting cat.
He's going even bigger with that. That's cool. I'm looking forward to this episode.
Yeah, me too. I always wanted to watch this movie, but then I also knew we were going to cover it at some point, so I kind of held off so I can go into it with fresh eyes.
Nice.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for listening. Please remember to rate, review, subscribe to the podcast if you can. We appreciate it.
We do.
Helps new listeners find us. You can follow us on Twitter or Blue Sky at BlastZonePod. You can email us, blastzonepod@gmail.com. If you have any questions, recommendations for movies to cover, just want to chat about movies, we love hearing from you.
Hit us up.
And we'll see you next time in the Blast Zone.
See you next time in the Blast Zone.
The Blast Zone.